Johnny Mac with your daily comedy news from the Daily Show Twitter account. It's official. Ketanji Brown Jackson will now be the most powerful black woman in America to have her opinions dismissed by 2/3 of her coworkers. Seth Meyers, Judge Jackson, became the first black woman to be confirmed to the Supreme Court, in case you were wondering why the flag over the Fox News building is at half staff. Kimmel, Jackson is the first black woman on the Supreme Court. She got yes votes from all Senate Democrats and 3 pro-pedophile Republicans. That's a callback. Listen to yesterday's podcast. Kimmel still upset that Marjorie Taylor Greene called the police on him. He said she called the police. Not only did she call the police, she called the same police she voted against giving a congressional gold medal to for defending our Capitol against the insurrection she helped incite on January 6th. That's who she called, the people she wanted to defund. It's amazing how quickly you can go from these liberals, you can't say anything anymore, to what did you say? I'm calling the cops. Must be that cancel culture they're always talking about. So after processing the fact that someone called the police on me, believe it or not, that's never happened to me in my life, I tweeted back, "Officer, I'd like to report a joke. This woman, remember, she's the one who endorsed fringe conspiracy theories and repeatedly indicated support for executing prominent Democratic politicians. Now she's dialing 911 because she got made fun of. She's a snowflake and a sociopath, and at the same time, a snowciopath. And nobody does anything. I feel like maybe other Republicans like having her around to make the rest of them seem normal." From Yahoo, Kathy Griffin said, "I'm just trying to get uncanceled, make a living again, and recover from effing cancer." She spoke about Joe Rogan and said his fan base is very frightening because the misogyny runs so deep. When I make fun of his show, the Elon Musk army comes after me, the Rogan army comes after me, the Tim Pool army comes after me. They're very into swarming. I've known guys like Joe my whole career, and guys like that are best to stay away from. There are other people that can get into the arena with him. She commented around the topic of Louis C.K., but not necessarily Louis himself. Her quote, "I've seen all their penises." It's a very common thing for male comics of that era to literally whip out their penises, constantly rub them against you, make a joke about it, and then try to get you to touch it. I believe her, but that sounds hard. Like, what is wrong with people? Kathy said, "That was just a day at the club. That's what guys don't understand. They think of it as a joke or a get over a moment because it's not rape. The part that gets me is that it killed the dreams of the young women he encountered because they chose to speak out." She talked about Dave Chappelle and said, "Dave's a genius, but I can never understand the black experience, so I can only speak about black people in a certain way, if at all. Dave doesn't have the trans experience." They know he doesn't know them, and that's how groups get dumped on, when somebody who doesn't really know what they're about makes assumptions. And Kathy Griffin talked about CNN and said, "I'm hopeful that the network will get better because there's real bro culture over there. And when I say bro culture as a woman, I've got to include men of color, gay men, and white men. If they get away from the kind of leadership that Jeff Zucker used over there, then they're only going to get better if they just put a woman at the helm and not a corporate woman that's been doing what Jeff wants," which has never happened. I think that's going to change stuff pretty quickly. She spoke about Anderson Cooper and said, "I thought he was a real friend, and I feel like a sucker." I guess I would say what he always says, which is, I wish him the best. During the week, the Comedy Store turned 50 years old. David Letterman appeared back there in May of 1975. He told Variety he was deeply afraid to squander what he saw as an opportunity to break into the entertainment industry's major leagues. Letterman never made it to the stage the first time he signed up for an open mic night. He said regular comics kept showing up and bumping us beginners, so they never got around to the L's. He said being in the spotlight felt no less harsh the following week when he finally got up there. "My first vision of it was this white light, and that's all I could see. Like I'm having my retina check now on stage. And I did my silly little jokes for 5 minutes and got off." He can't remember the audience's reaction. Applause, no applause, I don't know. But he remembers the response that was most important to him. It came from Mitzi Shore. Mitzi said, "Oh, you should come back again." I got back in my car and sort of floated up Crescent, up to Laurel Canyon, and down into North Hollywood where I lived. And from that moment on, it was really the most fun I ever had. Speaking of comedy clubs, that's what we call a segue in the business. Pete Davidson's Staten Island Ferry turned comedy club. Remember that? He bought a ferry. He wants to make a comedy club. Bought a $280,000 Staten Island ferry. The U.S. Sun says the Ferry Comedy Club likely won't be open to fans for years. Courtney Worrell is the president and CEO of the Waterfront Alliance and said, "There's the issue of finding the space, which is number one. The other part's getting the permits. The major challenge with finding a place for a very large boat is that the New York harbor and the waterfront is extremely congested with not only boats, but the limited space that makes up what New York City in terms of its dense and compact urban life is exactly what's on the waterfront too. Finding a large home for a very large ship is literally like building a skyscraper. I'm not sure it's literally like building a skyscraper. Anything that casts a permanent shadow over the water really affects the bottom aquatic life, and so there's an environmental hurdle that really has to be overcome that could be quite large in addition to everything else. All right, I'll concede it's maybe somewhat like building a skyscraper. Real quick stop at Gossip Corner. Kim Kardashian brought her boyfriend Pete Davidson to the premiere of Hulu's The Kardashians the other night. The pair were seen holding hands. This makes the headlines. When you prep your daily comedy news podcast show, you type Pete Davidson into Google every day, and this is what comes up. Pete and Kim held hands. Moving on. I shared this on the Daily Comedy News subreddit and on the Facebook group, which is Daily Comedy News Podcast Group. A really nice interview with Backstage and Leslie Jones, who at 47 was the oldest first-timer to join SNL's cast. I didn't realize Leslie was 47 when she was on the show. Leslie said, I remember sitting at the table at a post-show meal one night, and I said, you MFers better be glad when I didn't get here in my 20s and 30s, because I'd run circles around them B-words. If I'm not already doing it now at my age, you can call me the oldest, you can call me whatever. I'm the best. She remembers opening for my former coworker, Jamie Foxx, in the late 80s. Leslie said it was not good. Fox asked, how old are you? She said she was 19. Fox said, you don't know S. You don't have nothing to joke about. Have you ever been properly sexed? Cleaning that up a little. He was like, you need to get fired. You need to get heartbroken. You need to break hearts. You need to have a life to have something to talk about. She took Jamie Foxx's advice and ran with it, returned to the comedy scene in 1993. She said, if you were a waiter and you went to work and had a bad day, you'd still get up and go to work the next day. It's just what happens. It's the game. You know, there's a reason somebody didn't laugh that night. It might be that you didn't do it with the right timing. It might have been the crowd. Maybe you shouldn't have done that joke. It can be a lot of reasons that you bomb, but you need to figure it out and keep going. Then you get up. If you bomb, you write better. You've got to bomb. You should have a season where you do nothing but bomb. That's where you find all your material in the lost places. It's never in the places that are easy. If it is, it means it ain't funny and it's cheap and you're not doing yourself a service. Leslie said, I would chase Chris Rock to his car. I would chase him from the Laugh Factory and I would badger him all the way to the stage. She'd beg him to pull her into his circle and he'd always reply, you're not ready. I would go off on him. I didn't get what he was saying. Looking back now, she understands. The jokes I was doing, they weren't really about me. They were too general. The death of her brother in 2009 helped push her forward. That's what made me go to the other side. I didn't give an F what no one thought. I didn't give an F if they laughed or not. I'd pulled out jokes I'd been wanting to do for years and just never did. On the CW tonight, the American version of Would I Lie to You? Media Village talked to Asif Manvi, who's the host of this. He said the premise is so incredibly simple. It's not a game show. You're just playing for bragging rights, telling funny stories, and having a good time. Turned out the CW executives were also fans of the show, so it all came together and it happened. I discovered it during the Trump administration. What did he learn hosting the show's 13 episodes? Well, celebrities are very good storytellers. You have these well-known people revealing stories you'd otherwise never know, like if Brooke Shields actually did babysit lemurs when she was a teenager, or did Richard Kind really once give Paul Newman a piggyback ride? Often there's an element of truth in the lie, because when people are forced to make up a lie, certain elements of it are true. The actual story may ultimately be a lie, but there are lots of personal revelations throughout the story to make it believable. Would I Lie to You on the CW tonight, 8:30. There is a new episode of the podcast, The Best Song Ever, this week. Each week, music journalist Scott Frampton picks one song and tells you why it's awesome. This week's song is Just Like Honey by the Jesus and Mary Chain. Scott sent along a note, said, like love turned fraught, honey can be bittersweet, especially when a band pours it through record-setting guitar feedback. That podcast is called The Best Song Ever this week, wherever you get your shows. All right, from Vulture, a review of Ronny Chieng's special. Now, I haven't gotten to see Ronny Chieng's special myself yet. Here's why. In order, I work on Monday nights. My daughter has soccer 2 nights a week. My daughter had a concert. I go to trivia night. And then baseball season started, so I haven't had much TV time. But Vulture reviewed Ronny Chieng's special. Now, what caught my eye here is the byline is by Nicholas Kwa. Now, I know Nick Kwa's name because he used to write a podcasting insider newsletter called Hot Pod. He still writes about podcasts for Vulture. I'm not saying Nick is not a comedy expert, but I have not known him in the past to be a comedy expert. Nick Kwa for Vulture writes, let's get this out of the way. Speakeasy looks gorgeous. The special opens with a shot of the comedian and his wife walking down Doyer Street in Chinatown. then ducking into Chinese Tuxedo, the trendy Cantonese restaurant that serves as the night's venue. Skipping ahead, when Chieng takes the stage, it's on a small round platform in the middle of the dining space circled by red lanterns, candlelight, and potted foliage from more equatorial climates, as shot by director Sebastian Di Natale. This is a production flowing with iconography, Chinese-American iconography. Nikwa adds, it's a bummer then that Chieng's actual material never comes close to being as interesting as Speakeasy looks. At best, it's a passable special that makes decent use of Chieng's special perspective on U.S. politics. At worst, it's an hour from a privileged outsider who draws on the tropes of Asian America without knowing very much about what to do with the meaning. Skipping ahead, its better sections revolve around conceits in which Chieng capitalizes on the gap between the American audience and the specificity of his own background. One of the jokes, it's very hard to explain Singapore to Americans. It's very hard to explain any other country to Americans. All right, that's not bad. There's some tired bits, including a joke about the pill as a way to express generic differences between men and women. An early crowd work gag premised on determining which race has the worst racist comes with a payoff so predictable, I'm pretty sure I've seen it somewhere else. The special loses focus around the half-hour mark. It's not that Chieng isn't able to sustain momentum over the hour, he just ultimately doesn't go anywhere. Skipping ahead, things aren't helped by the fact that the closing stretch is anchored by a sprawling diatribe about critics, quote, who the F reviews comedy unironically? The section suffers from a lack of precision. Online trolls, professional comedy critics, audience members, and Twitter folk are all conflated into the stream of critique and lack of actual insight. Chieng says, you can find flaws in anything. If you look hard enough, you can find flaws in Mona Lisa. What does that mean? Yeah, okay. What does that mean? Okay, so I'm going to stop there. This review is negatively reviewing Ronny Chieng making fun of people who review comedy specials. All right. This is a long review, too. You'll find this on Vulture. All right, what else is happening in comedy? Are you in the UK? Tonight is the We Got Tickets Musical Comedy Awards 2022. Now in its 14th year, if you enjoy acts that combine comedy with music such as Bill Bailey, Tim Minchin, who's great in Flight of the Conchords, you'll love this Your finalists, Abigail Carter-Simpson, Amy Weber, Chris Timoney, Jeff Japers, Joseph Emsley, Kaylee Jones, Kit Sullivan, Nicola McMurtry, Orlando Gibbs, Simon David, the Sugar-Coated Sisters, and Talal Karkouti. Head on over to the Bloomsbury Theatre. See who wins the musical comedy crown. That sounds like a good time. And if you're in Melbourne, again, you probably missed this show. I keep doing this. I forget how time zones work. I should probably work in a day in advance. You weren't going anyway. Gary Johal is a Singapore-born comedian who spans observational humor to the deliciously risque. His comedy stylings are a heady brew of everything funny. Whether it's regional shows in country Australia or metropolitan Melbourne, Tokyo, or Singapore, Gary Johal has the jokes to make you croak. Now, I was reading that, the jokes to make you croak. Now, in English slang, that would mean the jokes that make you die? So I'm like, oh, it probably means something else in Aussie slang. Nope. I'm on an Aussie slang website that says croak means to die. So if you want to die, go see Gary Johal tonight at the Melbourne International Comedy Festival. I might skip that one. Who knows? That's your comedy news for today. Regular episode tomorrow. Follow the show for free on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Overcast, wherever you get your shows. If you would like early releases and commercial-free releases all bundled into one thing, $5 a month. Become a premium subscriber on Apple Podcasts. See you tomorrow.